Alrighty, guys. Well, the Oscars have come and gone, and there's a lot to talk about. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the 2025 Academy Awards. So we'll talk about the winners. We'll talk about the results. We'll talk about even how my predictions stacked up. And spoiler alert, I think I did pretty well. Not to toot my own horn, not to give myself credit or anything, but I think I did pretty well. Anyways, we'll get to all that later. I'm being facetious. I mean, it's all not random. It's not completely random. I like to think that this year I paid more attention to the pre-Oscar races than ever before. And I obviously, for the first time watched almost every single Oscar-nominated movie, at least the big ones, except for I'm Still Here, which, again, I'm going to really try to see as soon as it's available on streaming or rent. Anyways, so that, this year was in particular, of interest to me because I had, a stake in it. And just in terms of I watched all the movies, I ranked them. You can go check out last week's episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod where I ranked all of my favorite ones and I talked about my predictions, but we'll talk about that. And we'll also, I want to talk about the show itself and kind of sprinkle in some things here and there as we go along about the winners and losers. So first of all, and I say losers, snubs, not winners because they're all winners. Most of them, in my opinion, really deserve to be nominated. And we'll go on from there. So let's start out here at the beginning. And let's actually start out at the very beginning. First of all, they started out here with this montage about LA. And it would be remiss for us to say, to not mention what happened in LA a few months ago, or not a few months ago, a few weeks ago with the LA fires. And I think that it was a really good thing of them to bring it up and to be serious about it. And yes, of course, Conan made some jokes, but not at anyone's expense, but rather to really, lift up the people who lost their homes. And he brought out the firefighters. And I thought that was great. So the opening was a really beautiful tribute. And then Ariana Grande steps on stage and starts singing. And it's beautiful. And then Cynthia Erivo steps on stage and starts singing. And for some reason, this whole time, I'm sitting there going, wow, this is really pretty. I'm really glad they're here. They're showcasing the Oscar-nominated actresses, and they can really sing, and it's awesome, and it's awesome. And then you hear the notes. You start hearing the jingles, right? From the very beginning of, or that part of the chorus of Defying Gravity. And Cynthia Erivo starts singing. And I'm not afraid to admit it. I started crying. I don't know what it was. And it's weird because in the theater, right? As I watched this movie, I've seen it twice now. It's powerful, that ending. And to me, I've said this before on the channel when I talk about Wicked, I grew up playing music. I grew up, listening to a lot of music. Music to me speaks almost as powerfully as movies do, if not even more in certain points. It's just hard to explain. In the art form, there's no hierarchy, but in the art form categories, right? There's visual art and there's music and there's, of course, many, dance and many different kinds of art, right? And in terms of art, movies and television and storytelling have always been at the very top for me, right? But music is right there. And it's just hard to explain. I can't explain to you why when I hear certain notes or when I hear music in a certain way, it just elicits emotion out of me. I can't explain that. And that's why I always say movie musicals, or just musicals in general, but movie musicals are so powerful because it's taking the combination of both storytelling and music and combining them. And that's just unfair. And so when I watch Wicked, both times, when she sings Defying Gravity, and especially at the end, tears come to my eyes, and it's so moving. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the LA tribute at the beginning, or maybe it was just seeing it live and being so unexpected and taken aback. But when they start singing, I just got so choked up and I got emotional because, again, it's just, to me, it encapsulates the beauty of that art. And I'm going to say it right now. I'm always liable to change my mind in these kinds of rankings and stuff. They're all snapshots, right? So when I made my top movies of 2024 at the end of December, I had Inside Out 2 as number 1. And I love that movie. I really do. But when I watched the Oscars and I heard them singing, Wicked became, and it was for a while. I just needed to find it out for myself. Wicked became my favorite movie of 2024. It's unbelievable. This was, to me, and I haven't seen every Oscars, I haven't seen every single ceremony or whatever, but to me, this was the best opening I've ever seen. It was unbelievable. So I was a wreck already at the beginning. That was not on my bingo card to cry. Which was crazy. And then Conan came out, and I thought he did a great job. I think Conan is silly, right? Jimmy Kimmel has been doing it for the last few years. And Jimmy Kimmel, I like Jimmy Kimmel as a host. He's pretty good. He's pretty funny, and he has some good bits and stuff. I think Conan just brings a little bit more of that craziness, that offsets a little bit of the seriousness of it all. I think that the fact that he's just so silly and is willing to yell and make a fool of himself on stage, because Kimmel loves the bits. And he loves, he's not afraid to laugh at his own expense. But Conan is really on another level. He's chaotic, is what I would say. And it's really fun. So I really enjoyed his monologue. And I thought that his opening bit, the part where he was singing and dancing about not wasting time was so funny to me. And so, yeah, we went on and we started the show. So right away, we started out here. And I'm going to go to my predictions now. And I think the first, I could be wrong. I don't remember what the first award. That's right. The first award, interestingly enough, was Best Supporting Actor. I was not prepared for that. And that was Kieran Culkin. And so that was an early win for me. But then, right off the bat, I think the next one was a Best Original Screenplay. And that went to Anora. And I predicted A Real Pain. And I thought The Brutalist should have won. So to see Anora come out of there and win it, all of a sudden alerted me to something that would continue on for the rest of the night, was that I had I had underestimated Anora, and I think that a lot of us had as well. Maybe not all of us, because, I think it had some momentum definitely going into that night, excuse me. But I started to look at my predictions, and there were some that I got wrong. And I looked at them and I said, those are going to flip for Anora. A couple I was still really surprised by, but we'll talk about those in just a second. So the night went on. I started out 2 for 4 because the other category that tripped me up very early was the Best Animated Feature, which I predicted The Wild Robot would win. And Flow didn't come out of nowhere. Like, Flow was winning those awards here and there. And so, definitely had to take it seriously. But I didn't know we had to take it that seriously because, and again, I haven't seen the film. So I could absolutely watch the movie and go, oh no, this is the best movie of 2024. I just haven't seen the movie. And I probably will at some point. But, Flow wins. And so then I was going, oh, well, now I'm 2 for 4. I started out 2 for 4, and I thought my whole night is ruined. My whole night is absolutely ruined. But then I went on a pretty good hot streak for a little while there, actually. I was something like 11 for 13 at one point. So I got every single one right through a good portion of the rest of the night. I think, let's looking at this list here, things like Best Cinematography went to The Brutalist. I thought that was, I thought Dune Part 2 should have won that, but it went to The Brutalist. Best Original Score went to The Brutalist. Production Design, Wicked. Sound Design, Dune Part 2. Visual Effects, Dune Part 2. Adapted Screenplay, Conclave. No big surprises for me. Best International Feature, I'm Still Here, beat out Emilia Perez, which I think, given all the controversies, makes some sense there. Best editing, and again, this was the one category that I just wasn't super sure about, so I picked Anora, and I thought Anora had good editing, and sure enough, Anora wins. And at that point, you go, okay, I think I see what's happening here. So then we go on, right? And the categories are winning, and at this point, I'm something like 11 for 13, and Zoe Saldana wins Best Supporting Actress. Adrian Brody wins Best Actor. We'll talk about those in just a second. I want to get to the Anora story of it all, and then we'll talk about some other highlights and maybe lowlights of the Oscars, and then we get to. So the screenplay one was what threw me off, right? A real pain I thought was going to win, and it turned out to be Anora, right? And at that point I was like, okay, all right, we'll see. And so then we get to the end of the night, and I'm sitting here going, okay, I feel pretty good. I feel like I could go very, very feasibly. I could go 15 for 17 because the last 3 categories that we had left, I think I was something like 12 for 14, and I go, okay, I feel really good about these last 3 categories because while I had not predicted Anora to really push that hard towards the end of this Oscar race, I had seen the writing on the wall enough to change my pick from The Brutalist for Best Picture to Anora because I saw the writing on the wall for Best Picture. But for the other 2 categories, Best Director and Best Actress, while I knew that Sean Baker and Mikey Madison, were really strong contenders in those categories, I thought that the other 2, my predicted winners, right, were so strong that they would not have been able to have been topped. And I think that Best Director in hindsight, I probably should have changed it to Sean Baker, but Best Actress we'll talk about in just a second. So I was watching and I was going, okay, 15 for 17, right? I was being presumptuous and whatnot. Best Actress, they get on stage. Emma Stone gets on stage. And she goes, the Best Actress Oscar goes to Mikey Madison. And I knew it was over. At that point, you just knew Brady Corbet was not going to win Best Director. It was going to be Sean Baker. And the Oscar voters had spoken. Now, look, I don't hate the movie Anora. I don't. You can go watch my ranking. I thought it was enjoyable. I thought it was entertaining. I look at it, though, and it's one where I just don't quite understand. I hated the substance, not because of any artistic anything or the storytelling. I knew exactly what they were going for. The storytelling was really good and all that kind of stuff. It just wasn't for me. I would never watch that movie again. It was so disturbing to look at. I can't look at that kind of stuff. It's the body horror is terrifying to me. But Demi Moore gave one of the scariest, most real, raw performances I've ever seen in my life. And I don't know. I think Mikey Madison, for the role that she was given, did a good job. I think she did a good job. But I just stacking it up against Demi Moore, I just couldn't understand. So once Mikey Madison won, I just knew it was over. Anora was going to sweep. And so sure enough, they go Best Director, and Sean Baker walks up there and accepts the Best Director Oscar. And at that point, it was okay. It was obvious Anora was going to win. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, we know what's going to happen here. And I resigned myself to going 13 for 17, which I think, in all honesty, is pretty good. But I was a little disappointed that I don't know. You had to ride the Anora momentum to get to that point. A couple other notes before we wrap up this segment here that so again, pointing out that Anora had momentum really early on with screenplay and editing. The James Bond tribute for 10 minutes, was a big, I could say a lot of things that aren't appropriate, but it was a, let's just say, a middle finger, to put it lightly, to Amazon for their takeover of the franchise, over the Broccoli producers, right? So, and yes, their real name is Broccoli. I'm not just making fun of them. Their actual name is Broccoli. So yeah, that was interesting that they spent that much time on a James Bond tribute. I thought Zoe Saldana's speech was very moving, even though most people have said she's given pretty much the same speech every single time. But, you can't blame her. I mean, it's the Oscars, right? It's the Oscars. And for the most part, honestly, as I was, going through the categories and as we were going through cinematography, editing, some of the bits, like Ben Stiller was really funny. Who was it? Scarlett Johansson and June Squibb. That bit about June Squibb being Bill Skarsgård, that was really funny. The firefighters bit was really funny, but it was mostly quiet. And honestly, I think that's fine. I didn't need drama because for the most part, the past few Oscars have been memorable for all the wrong reasons. So I think that's totally fine. But then the memorable part came when Adrian Brody took the stage. And Adrian Brody took the stage and started talking. And at the very beginning, if you caught it, once he gets on the stage, he goes, "Oh, they're already timing me." So he was aware of the time. And he gave one of the weirdest, most rambling Oscar speeches I've ever seen, where he was very well aware he was running out of time and just continued to talk. And it got to the point where he even told the orchestra to stop playing him off. And they did, which I guess respect, right? Out of respect for him. But he said stop. And I was like, okay, are you going to say one more sentence? And he went on for another couple minutes. And I was like, that's bizarre. So he gave one of the weirdest Oscar speeches I've ever seen. Again, I think he deserved the Oscar. I thought he was so good in The Brutalist, but that was really strange. And I will say, to wrap things up, I think the best speech for me, or at least one of the highlights for me, was Sean Baker's speech about saving theaters. And I think that's awesome. Let's really go out there and support theaters. And again, just his plea to make movies for the theaters, for the big screen, I think is a really fantastic thing. So overall, I'm pretty happy with my predictions, although I think that, again, you just kind of had to see the Anora wave coming, and I just wasn't prepared to put Anora in those categories for screenplay and I put it for editing, but for Best Director and Best Actress, I just thought Demi Moore. I would, in 100 times, I might have put Mikey Madison twice out of 100 times. I think I would have put Demi Moore's name if I had to redo it 99 times again. So I don't feel bad about that one at all. Flow, I just couldn't see it. I thought The Wild Robot had it in the bag. And Best Director, that one to me, maybe I could have flipped, before this. But again, I feel pretty good about the predictions. And I think overall the Oscars were relatively quiet, especially given how much controversy there was heading into it with films like Emilia Perez and Carla Sofia Gascon. So I think overall it was a pretty successful Oscars, and I had a good time watching it. So guys, let me know in the comments, what did you think about the 2025 Academy Awards? What were you most excited about, seeing the wins? What were you most disappointed in, seeing the snubs? For me, it was Demi Moore. I really wanted her to win, but alas, we can't have it all. Let me know in the comments down below.